I'd like to call to order the meeting of the King George County School Board. We're going to begin with an invocation from Pastor Bill Holcomb from the King George Church of God.
Good evening. I just want to say thank you to the school board for the opportunity to lead the invocation tonight, and it's a privilege and honor. And I thank you guys for your leadership in our community. And with that, I will lead us in prayer. Would you bow your heads if you feel comfortable? Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you today for your goodness. We thank you for your kindness and your mercy that you have extended to each and every person on this planet through your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you that 2,000 years ago he died on a cross for the sins of everyone who will receive him. God, I pray that, God, our hearts and our minds would place our faith and trust in you, God. Lord, we thank you that you are the creator and the sustainer of all life. God, that you are the establisher of families, the establisher of government in nations according to your word. God, you said that you have predetermined the boundaries of each and every nation, God. And so we know and we recognize that human government is an expression of your divine order. And Father, I just invite your spirit into this meeting tonight, God. God, I pray that you would quicken our hearts and our minds, God, to perceive the wisdom that is from you, from above. God, I pray that our conversations would be peaceable and full of love and full of grace. God, I pray that our schools would be blessed. God, that our teachers, our administrators, God, all of our para workers, and God, everyone on staff in all of the schools in our community, God, I pray for grace and strength for them as they enter into a new year. God, I know that they all come into this year with personal experiences and perhaps difficulties. God, I pray that you would give them strength, Lord. God, we lift up every child that will be attending a school in King George and pray, God, that you would bless them, that you would bless their families, and God, that you would bless our school system, Lord. We pray for a hedge of protection around them, God, and that you would keep our children physically safe this year in Jesus' name. God, and we pray, God, in addition to the physical aspect, God, we pray that you would guard their hearts and their emotions and their minds in Jesus' name, God, that they would be safe from any threat, God, whether it be physical or emotional or spiritual, God. God, we humbly ask all of these things and invite your presence into this meeting in the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
And for the pledge, please. After the pledge, if you can remain standing for a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag to the republic. All right, next we have public comments. I have a few things to say before public comments, but if you haven't already signed up, make a public comment. We still have the sheet here. If somebody still wants to go and leave it down there in case somebody, while I'm speaking, wants to sign up. I'll take it in just a second. If you wish to speak at public comment sections, please see the clerk as I just mentioned. Ideally prior to this meeting, but of course it's fine if you want to do it now. Public comment is a time for the community to present matters that they believe deserve the board's attention. Comments are one-way communication from the community member to the school board, and they are not a form of dialogue or debate. The school board applies the following procedures to all speakers and does not discriminate based on identity of the speaker, the content of the speech, or the viewpoint of the speaker. Comments should be presented in a courteous, respectful, and appropriate manner. The public shall address the school board only on matters that are related to the services and policies of the school division. Speech that causes disruption to the meeting, promotes private business ventures, or involves threats of any kind, or involves intimidating language, relates to public offices or campaigns, involves complaints identifying individual students or staff members, or contains lewd, profane, or obscene language is prohibited. Proper decorum and the provisions of this procedure directive are expected to be followed at all public meetings of the school board. The members of the audience shall conduct themselves in the manner as outlined above for the individual speakers and shall not disrupt an open meeting of the school board nor incite others to do so. At the discretion of the chair, any person violating the rules listed above may be asked to leave the meeting. When recognized by the chair, speakers will be asked to identify themselves by name, state their relationship to the school division, such as staff member, student, parent, grandparent, and community member, etc. We'd also like you to indicate which magisterial district that you reside in King George. Commentary during public comment is generally limited to 3 minutes, and so we will try to abide by that. If you're close to it, I'll simply give you a little bit of a warning, but then you'll need to finish your comments at the end of 3 minutes. All right, the first one that we have for public comment today is Jacob Girding, and you're from Dahlgren District. If you'd please come to the microphone.
Good evening. My name is Jacob Girding, and I'm a resident and taxpayer in the Dahlgren District. I'm also an elementary school librarian and advocacy chair of the Maryland Association of School Librarians. I will be speaking tonight in my capacity as a resident in support of the books TTFN and Sold that were discussed last month. As a librarian, I can tell you that these books meet selection criteria, have likely been in the library for over a decade without incident, and were defended at 2 different levels of the reconsideration process as books with the value about real issues. Despite the relevance of these books, passages which students can find online are being used to say that nobody should have a right to read them, a direct attack on parental rights. While I am not a lawyer and I am not providing legal advice of any kind, courts have spoken on many of the issues before you. The PICO Supreme Court decision only allows you to remove books from libraries under very limited circumstances. Further, the Virginia and U.S. Supreme Courts have both ruled in Virginia versus American Booksellers Association that when we think about minors, we must think about the age of the oldest minors we serve in a place when discussing the suitability of books. Could moving them to high school be a consideration? The case law, Sund versus C of Wichita Falls, Texas, ruled that parental rights with library materials don't allow a non-parent to dictate when someone else's children may read, what someone else's children may read, and also don't allow one parent to suppress material not only for her own children, but for all others in the community. Our schools already have a system to ensure that those that have permission can gain access to constitutionally protected materials. So if we don't want kids to read the books, the system won't permit them to check it out. I hear concerns some kids may try to circumvent the system, but you can't take rights away from all based on a possibility of what might happen per Counts versus Cedarville School District. While Sund and Counts are circuit and district court decisions that are not binding here in Virginia, they have been used frequently in legal opinions about school and public library books nationwide, adding relevance. Rape and trafficking aren't pornography, they're criminal acts that disproportionately impact this very age group. Students and families have the right to know this information. We don't lead our children to war when we arm each other with the material and information, no matter how good or bad. They need to confront evil when they see it. But we do when we minimize the evil of rape, trafficking, alcohol, drugs, depression, and other societal ills through deceit. Even Justice Alito says, the proudest boast of our free speech jurisprudence is that we protect the freedom to express the thought we hate.
Thank you, Mr. Girding. Next, we have Stephanie Marsic. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly.
My name is Stephanie Marsic. I live in the Monroe District, and I have 3 children making their way through the school system. At the heart of this issue is the refusal of some parents to recognize and accept the different parenting styles of others. Everyone parents to the best of their ability and according to the needs of their child. I resent that others are trying to interfere with my ability to parent. The board questioned at the last meeting the educational value of these books. My goal as a parent is to educate my child as a whole. This means not only educating them in aspects that can be quantified and tested, but also facilitating their social education. I use books like the ones being challenged to have difficult conversations with my children. There are people and situations in these books that my children will probably never encounter, but they might. It is my job as a parent to prepare them for as many life possibilities as I can. Educational value goes beyond testing and quantitative assessment. One could argue that group work has no educational value. The end assignment could be generated by a student working alone. There is no necessity for working as a group, but group work has value beyond that of the graded assignment. It teaches students important social skills like how to work with different personalities, resolve conflict, and work toward a common goal with others. The same can be said for the 2 books up for challenge now. While their value cannot be measured, tallied, graded, or quantified in any way, their contribution to helping my children learn empathy, learn how to interact with others who are different from them, and learn how to navigate situations that are unfamiliar with are immensely valuable to their education as a human being. I was disappointed by the board failing to stand behind the librarian whose name was called out during the last meeting. You were quick enough to express empathy with and apologize to the parent who withdrew their children from school, but not with the librarian whose name was used in juxtaposition with violent language. I realized the librarian was not being threatened by the individual, but there are people who do not make that distinction and act on language such as this. We see it all the time. If you as a board seek to replace books with language like this, then you are doing no service to any child. And to the people who use language like this, if that is what protecting my child looks like to you, then my children don't need your protection. I want you banned from my kids, not these books. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie Evans.
Hello, I'm a proud grandmother of 3 children in the King George school system. I'm also a resident of Dahlgren and a taxpayer. I was not at the last meeting, but I was devastated to hear, one, that a member of the school was called out. And from what I understood, you all didn't stand up for her. I heard that wrongly, but it was upsetting to hear. I also understand there are 2 more books that are being challenged. And I thought this issue was settled by this wonderful man here suggesting using the governor's rules. And I thought the banning of books was settled in the new program. They were going to handle the books as curriculum material. But then I was told that no, these lists was made before that decision, so these books must be challenged. Okay. Then why in the last 3 challenge meetings has the person who brought the challenge not attended? Why isn't she showing up? She brought the challenge. So why is there a challenge? Lastly, I read the books. I even got the book sold on Audible so I could get deep into it and hear the voice of the person reading the book with the accent, and it really pulled me into the book, and it was beautiful. It was sad, it was heartbreaking, it was everything, but it was not smut. In my job, we must learn about trafficking. As an adult, I have to learn about trafficking, but kids don't. And this is from the perspective of a 13-year-old. So why can't 13-year-olds read that and know what dangers are out there? There was no smut in this book. TTFN, my God, it broke my heart. These 3 girls, 16-year-old, discussing their different parts of their life. One was having drug problems. One was acting, but there was no smut there. There was no detail. There was no, there was no intimate details. It was 3 girls sharing their life. And I could relate to some of my grandchildren in that book. And I would be happy to allow them to read it. The point I want to make is these books were not smut. There was no smut in them. And if the person who feels they are maybe they should examine their own thinking and see why they feel it's smart. Thank you.
Thank you. Serenity Boyd Henst? Hinch, thank you.
Thank you. I am a parent of a middle schooler and an elementary schooler who will be joining the middle school next year. I would first like to thank Dr. Boyd for finding a way to address community concerns regarding reading materials while preserving the role of parental judgment in our students' education. That is what Governor Youngkin was elected on, and a topic that's very important to many parents. I believe that was kept in mind when reviewing whether the Bible should be available to students. It has war, enslavement, other topics I won't bring up here, and some very PG passages in the Song of Solomon. However, I believe you all understand that PG means parental guidance. The solution of keeping certain books behind the circulation desk and requiring parental involvement preserves the role of parental guidance. These books are not the Bible, but they deal with serious topics. The two books under discussion deal with human trafficking and teenagers in terrible but realistic situations. These aren't pleasant things, but I think we can all agree that pretending they don't exist doesn't solve the problem. As a parent, I want more tools to address these with my children, not fewer. Our kids need to have these discussions. They're not helped by people throwing around labels such as smut rather than acknowledging that parents have a role. Frankly, as a parent of a teenager, if there's a book that my kids find engaging and helps us discuss dangerous situations teens may encounter, I welcome that because I know my teen and I know what they're ready for. Don't replace my parental judgment with that of someone who has never met my child. And I ask you, please don't replace my parental judgment with someone who can't distinguish between painful discussions of human trafficking and actual obscene material. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherman Davis? Sherman Davis?
I'm Sherman Davis, voted in Dalton District. I have grandchildren in elementary or in high school and middle school, I believe. And I'm here to read from the greatest book ever. And I do that each meeting. I come and read from scriptures. And so thank you for the opportunity. And by the way, this book of Song of Solomon, a Jew had to be 30 years old to read that book. Just for your information. The wisest man, Solomon, he wrote in the book of Proverbs, he uses the word heart about 80 times. He said, my son, forget not my law, but let thine heart keep my commandments. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out it are the issues, a lot of issues today, out of it are the issues of life. The wise in heart will receive commandment, but the prating fool shall fall. Proverbs 10:8. The heart of the wicked is little worth. Proverbs 10, verse 20. Deceit is in the heart of them that imagine evil. Everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. The foolishness of a man perverted his way, and the heart fretteth against the Lord. My calling as a minister, of course, is to people to understand that I believe that government and God can't be separated. My job as a Christian is to realize and that folks understand that I am part of the group that believe that I am the salt of the earth and the light of the world. That's the salt of the earth. That's just not in the church house. That's everywhere. It's a courthouse or schoolhouse, where it might be. Salt has to burn and irritate, and light gives out and shows the darkness. And so that is my responsibility. I cannot separate God and state. I can't separate church and God. Of course, God is the author. He ordained government. We asked, what is the problem? And many times the problem is not the problem. It's the attitude towards the problem that's the problem. And God says the problem of the heart is the heart of the problem. And that is the soul of it. Always remember the crowd chose Barabbas not because they loved Barabbas, but because they hated the truth. They hated Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world. And so for this cause, God gave them up unto vile affections, and God gave them up unto uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts to dishonor
Thank you, Mr.
their
Davis.
own bodies to themselves. Professing themselves to be wise, the Bible says they became
Thank you.
fools. Thank you.
Susan Park.
Thank you to the school board and Dr. Boyd for the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Susan Park, and I have 2 children in the school system, and I live in the Madison district. One of the roles of the school board is to develop policies, and last year the board updated the policy regarding book challenges, and the schools implemented it. For the middle school, specific books labeled YA are kept behind the counter in the library and require parental permission if kids want to check the books out. So I thought this problem was solved. But now it seems we're revisiting the same issues. Mrs. Roberts, a King George resident with no children in our public schools, has
Excuse me,
decided
ma'am, if you could refrain from using names.
she has decided that 2 books should be removed from the library. She thinks she should have the power to decide what my children read. In fact, she thinks she should have the power to deprive every student at King George Middle School and their parents of their right to decide what they can read. And the school board seems to be seriously thinking about giving her that power, the power to deprive students and families of their rights. The school board is considering removing books from the library, even though the majority of families who actually have kids in the schools do not object to the books. Let's be clear, removing the books, banning them from the library, would violate students and families' First Amendment rights to access those materials. Books were professionally reviewed and are age appropriate for the middle school. There's no rational reason to remove the books. If the books are removed, any student or parent of a student who attends King George Middle School would have the standing to file a lawsuit because their First Amendment rights are being violated. Is this really the best use of taxpayer dollars to defend censorship and book banning? I've heard some people say that these books are obscene or they're pornography. No, they're not. They don't meet the legal definition of obscenity or pornography. What a waste of time and resources we're spending on this when other more important issues are faced by our schools, like large class sizes, overcrowding, low staff salaries, high turnover, long-term uncredentialed subs in the classroom, high student poverty rates, and lack of parental engagement. But instead of working to address or mitigate these challenges, our school board is focused on banning books. I'm asking you to bring your focus back to making our schools the best they can be and providing support to students and staff so they can achieve academic excellence. Stop getting distracted by the divisive agendas of a minority of residents, most of whom don't even have kids in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Metz.
Good evening, Brian Metz, parent of a student in the schools and Monroe District parent in that case. So I wish I could be as elegant as some of the other speakers tonight. I believe everything that has been said in regard to protecting our parents' rights of what we believe our children should be exposed to in the schools. Couple of things that I think it's important that you as the board who are going to make some decisions on these books understand and recall when you get to that discussion. The ages of the middle school. Clearly we have 13-year-olds in the middle school. I believe we have a number of 14-year-olds in the middle school, and correct me if I'm not wrong, I think we might even have a 15-year-old. Everything must be taken in context. I wish the reviews of these books had been taken in the context of the paragraphs that they decided to pull out and use as examples. Another critical thing I hope you remember, I'm a parent. I'm the parent that if you take these books out of the schools, you're violating my right to allow my child to read those books. And people make all kinds of excuses. Well, they're available, the internet, I'll tell you, both parents work. It's difficult. My child liked the library, has been a huge resource over his school career. And there are some difficult books. These are novels. Keep that in mind. These are novels. Novels are not meant to be rosy. There are difficult situations brought up in those novels. The last thing that's really critical that I hope you remember is that another person's rights end where my rights begin. I believe the school has already taken up a valiant effort to implement the policy that you've asked for that already censors books. It moves them in a protected area. Students are not allowed to access those books without first having the school contact their parents. That is censorship. I'm not super happy about that censorship, but it's a compromise. Most things that we do are about compromise. We talked about civic virtue at the beginning of the school year. Civic virtue is not implementing your beliefs on all of us, but your ability to take our input into the way that you execute the laws, the rules, and the policies that you implement. So back to the two critical things I want you to take away. I'm the parent. Do not infringe upon my rights. I get to decide if my child is going to read that book. And rights. I could stand in the center square at the town square and swing my arms around, flailing. I can say what I want to under free speech. The minute my fist contacts another person's face, I have infringed upon their rights. That becomes assault. Do not assault my rights as a parent. Please let these books stay in the middle school in the way that they're there now. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie Gonzalez.
This mic needs help. Good afternoon. My name is Carrie Gonzalez, and I am a parent in the Dahlgren district of 2 elementary school students at Potomac Elementary. I understand the topic of book banning is returning to King George. As a former school board member who sat up there with some of you for 4 years, I can attest to the fact that there are issues that are way more pressing that demand the time and attention of our librarians, our teachers, and our administrators than this discussion. Instead of being worried that our children are going to ask to check out a book to read, you should be worried about whether or not our children can actually read and how the Virginia Literacy Act is going to affect our educators and children. I've heard many of you advocate in the past for parental rights and involvement in education, yet you are considering acting in such a fashion as to take that right away from many families who choose freedom of choice in reading materials for their children. If you're going to vote on removing books from our libraries, I expect each and every one of you to have first read each of these books that you choose to remove. It saddens me that there are members of this community who are fearful of books, who are so insecure in their status as parents of children that they do not believe they could use an opportunity to have a conversation with their children about subjects on which they may have differing opinions than others. I am thankful that I am confident in my role as a parent and in my relationship with my children, and that I welcome conversation with them on any topic they should encounter in their education or otherwise, of which in the journey of life there are many. I'm sorry for the few parents in this community who do not have such relationships with their children and do not trust their children to make good decisions regardless of what books they get at the library. Perhaps the opportunity to discuss a book could help strengthen those relationships and build that faith in their children. Please do not insult our librarians or allow members of the public to insult our librarians or single them out by name. I am certain that none of you would like to be called out by name by someone who knows significantly less about your profession than you do and imply that you are making inappropriate assertions about your credentials or implying that you are making decisions that are anything other than in the best interests of those you serve. Your role as school board members is to ensure that the superintendent hired by the school board is overseeing the day-to-day activities of our schools and that policies are in place to ensure our schools are operating within compliance with state law and in the best educational interest of our students. But you are not educators. You are not librarians. You are school board members. So let our superintendent, our educators, and our librarians do their jobs and you do yours.
Elizabeth Buckley.
I'm Elizabeth Buckley from the Dahlgren District. I am the mother of 4, of which 2 matriculated through King George schools. Although they've graduated and moved on, I have great concerns about what's happening to this school system. I have attended, I think, all but one, and I watched the last school board meeting on YouTube, and I was really, really surprised, shocked, and saddened by all the fear mongering, the hate, the negative vitriol, the accusations. I wonder, what are people so afraid of? Have confidence in your ability to parent your child. If you're afraid, then double down. I don't know what to tell you. I also have been to one of the meetings when there was a lot of sharing going on, and about people and their experience as a child being molested or whatever. And I want to say that that really struck me, and I can empathize with them. I can't say I know how you feel, but that doesn't mean that that's going to happen to your children because somebody reads a book. There was also lots of references to the Bible and Christianity and virtue signaling and such. And I have concerns about religion being injected too much into this discussion. I believe that a lot of this comes from a certain church, and I guess I'm not supposed to mention the name, but I went on its website, and one of the things when you read about that church is, we believe the state should have no control over the church affairs. I find that kind of hypocritical, where this church comes and tries to heavily influence the school's affairs and the government's affairs. This is also kind of taken out, directly from our First Amendment, which also says the state cannot form a church or religion, blah, 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 so on and so forth. But it also implies that the church cannot influence the government. And I think that's what's going on here. Also, I heard somebody saying that you as a board are running from conflict. And I totally disagree with that. The board you had a plan in place where parents they were given a form. If they didn't want their children to read certain books, they filled this form out. No parent filled the form out. I called the high school and the middle school. Yikes, 5 minutes. Anyway, I think that
Thank you,
fear
Ms.
leaves
Buckley.
where faith begins.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for speaking. Now we have any comments from the superintendent.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming out this evening. We certainly appreciate your attendance. I know this is a particularly challenging issue. It is very nice to see you all here this evening. It's nice to see everyone continuing to engage in our school system. I know as challenging as an issue as this is, I think it's very important. Did you have something, Ms. Park?
My son signed up to speak during the public comment, but his name got skipped. It's under Artemis Park.
I am sorry. I thought I checked and I called the name. Thank you. I am sorry. Yes, Artemis, it was not intentional. Please forgive me. Artemis Park, thank you. I think when I saw your name, Ms. Park, I think then I thought that, so thank you. And thank you for pointing that out. Please go ahead.
My name is Artemis. I'm the son of Susan Park and a 7th grade student at the King George Middle School. Stopping children and teenagers from reading books isn't going to prevent them from figuring out who they are or what they'll become. Hiding parts of life should never be necessary. In fact, it's ignorance. Supporting or influencing is one thing, but forcing your ideologies on them when they are so deprived of any other knowledge, any other life. I'm lucky enough to have a family who accepts me no matter my person, identity, beliefs, or otherwise, different or not from their own. A good book is meant to change the reader's perspective, bringing a new idea into your world. Banning books is hiding parts of life because you don't agree with it. It's selfish, really. Let your kids like what they like as long as it's safe and not hurting anyone. It's so important to protect these books. I found a safe place in reading, relating to characters, learning from them, and growing myself, ending each one with real-world topics to ponder. Thank you for listening, and thank you to the librarians.
Thank you. Again, I apologize. It was not intentional. Thank you.
Before I finish, did anyone else have public comment? Yes. Here, I think we can write that down.
Hi, I'm Bill Holcomb, and my kids are in the Sealston Elementary School. And I would just appreciate the opportunity to speak to this issue. And my kids love to read, and I love to encourage them to read. And I don't want us as a community to live in fear. That's not a good thing, right? So, I would just like us to throw around the idea of making available any kind of book that might be educational for the kids, perhaps like Playboy or anarchist cookbook or something like that. After all, parents can make those decisions, correct? And I just want to throw out there also that paganism and atheism are in and of themselves a form of religion, and the government is not to put upon the individuals, citizens of this country, any standard of religion. And so I am strongly in favor of not allowing access to any material that would be misconstrued as offensive to any parent. After all, we all pay taxes, right? And so I just wanted to share that and make a strong recommendation, since we don't want to live in fear, that we allow access to any kind of material that one parent might think would be good for their child, right? There's plenty of books on how to make explosives and how to engage in pedophilia, and I'm sure there's all kinds of material that we could put out there and make available for the sake of liberty and freedom, and let the parents make the choice. So, in addition, we could take it a step further, and we could offer behind-the-counter drugs for kids who might be interested in marijuana. Trying it out, that's their freedom, right? We could offer alcohol. I mean, how offensive is it that the government mandates that children under the age of 21 not be allowed to drink alcohol? I mean, let's really be free and really have some liberty in this country. I think that's where we should go as a school system and as a community. And so obviously that's all hyperbole. And I think that if there's a possibility that it's offensive to a family or a child, it should not be in our libraries, although I do appreciate librarians. God bless you guys.
Thank you.
God bless the United States.
Mr. Ken Stroud.
Ken Stroud, James Madison District. Thank you. I'm here as a citizen. So first, I'd like to clear a couple things up. Number one, there are my comments in the last school board. There were some people that didn't listen to everything that I said and didn't apply the time frames and things to that. So I referenced my time in the Marine Corps, which was over 20 years ago. And clearly, at that point, my frame of mind was a previous time. So at no time did I mean any harm to our librarian. So if anybody misunderstood that, then I didn't mean that. But what I did and what I do is I do stand between harm and children. I think that all parents, adults, I think that we should stand between anybody that wants to harm children. And I do stand between that. So for people that want untethered access to children or want to do something to harm them or want to plant seeds in their minds that shouldn't be there, then I do stand between children and harm. Let there be no mistake that there are people, there's evil in the world, and there are people that want access to children. There are people that would like for the defenders of children to be out of the way. There are people that would like to have that untethered access. Education of our children, reading, writing, math. There's good reading out there. If somebody chooses to discuss illicit things with their children, if you want them to have that, they have the ability as a parent to go buy that and provide it to their kids. But it's not the taxpayer's responsibility to provide that material to the kids. And the parents aren't afraid. I've had a couple people that have issues with this that I've heard from, but the majority of the people, they're not afraid to be parents. Nobody's afraid to be parents. I haven't spoke to anybody that's afraid to have conversations with their kids. They're not afraid of anything. What they're afraid of, they're not afraid of their kids and their relationship with their kids. They're afraid of the people that are out there, the predators, having access to the kids. There are predators that are inside the school system that are trying to do that. That's the fear. So it's those people that want that access. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Strong. All right. Well, what is your name?
I work in the school system. I went to Potomac and King George High School. I just want to tell you, I read Playboy when I was a kid. My mother allowed me to read whatever I wanted to read, and I'm still a good person, okay? Haven't committed any crimes, haven't hurt any children. I even work here in the school system. Because you read a certain kind of book does not make you commit crime, okay? It expands your worldview and your knowledge of what's going on around you. I've traveled extensively, alone and with groups. I've not had one person tell me that I was a pornographic or smut controlled person because I read a Playboy magazine. And I'm going to tell you, for the people that walk around here and think that people in the school system are all crazy because we want our kids to have access to lots of knowledge, not just good knowledge, which some people think only the things that they read are good, and the things that other people want to read are not good. Books are bad and books are good just like people, okay? People write books. Sometimes they write bad books. Sometimes they write good books. But you should always allow people to have an authority, meaning your family. My mother allowed me to read whatever, and she didn't commit any crimes. She didn't go out and hit people in the head or rob people or taught me to be a nice, upstanding citizen. I did 30 years in IT and decided to come into the school system to take less money because I wanted to come here and help children. Now, I worked in the library too with some of the nice people that work in the library. And I can't understand how people want to take things from children that want to learn. I know some of the people that are here, that their kids are in the Potomac and King George Elementary High School. I see kids graduate and go to Virginia Tech. My brother went to Virginia Tech. I just can't see somebody telling my mom that she can't control what I read. I mean, my mom's passed, but I'm just saying she did a good job raising 6 kids. And I didn't hear one time where she said, and she checked what we were doing. I didn't hear her one time say, don't do this reading wise, or don't read that book because it's not in the church. Because the church has nothing to do with what happens at my house when my mother decides what's right. I mean, that's my mom. She said she was the final authority. I'm the first and I'm the last because I'm raising you kids. Now, other people may think they're not, but the parent is the authority on raising their children, and the school's trying to help the best we can. And I want to say thank you guys for letting me speak. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. All right, if that's all, again, thank you very much. Dr. Boyd?
Yeah, so thank you all again for being here this evening, and thank you everyone that has participated in public comment in the last few weeks. Again, this is a difficult and challenging issue, but I think as we continue to have this very challenging discourse, it's one that's going to strengthen our community in the end. So we certainly appreciate everybody's attendance and engagement in the school division. I do want to say that on behalf of everyone, 700 plus employees in King George County Schools, we appreciate our librarians. So thank you very much. I just wanted to say that for the record, everything that you all have done in the last year, trying to work with our community, trying to make this something that is agreeable to most, it does not go unnoticed. So we certainly appreciate everything that you've done to help us work through a very challenging issue, not one that's challenging for King George, but one that we see challenging across the country right now. So we appreciate everyone that's engaging in King George County Schools. We certainly know that it's going to be a challenging issue to work through, and we appreciate everybody doing it peacefully. Just to make sure everyone's aware of what is going on moving forward, our next school board meeting is August 19th. August 19th will be at the King George Middle School. And again, our school board, I'm not speaking on behalf of them. They have not individually or collectively made any stance on this topic as of yet. They are responsible in our policy right now. If the appeal comes to them to make that decision, and they will work through that at our next school board meeting. So again, thank you all, and we certainly appreciate you being here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All right, are there any changes to the agenda, school board members? Mr. Rolls, did you have changes? Why don't you turn on your mic?
Just going from memory, I think as far as the revised social media policy, we still have a marked up version, so I anticipate that to be a discussion today and then probably bring it back to vote on a clean version next time.
Yeah, it's on the agenda. Yes.
So it's yeah, as an action item. So I'm thinking it probably.
You want to make it a discussion? All right.
We can do either way. Yeah. I mean, we can certainly do it either way.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. If we approve what we have tonight, then I can make those adjustments, but we can bring it back as an action item as well.
Anything else, Mr. Rolls?
So just to be clear, that's going to move to a discussion item.
You move it to a discussion.
Okay.
As board members know, oftentimes even as a discussion item, we can immediately, if the board agrees, we can move that to an action item if it is the will of the board. All right. Next, we have consent agenda. The minutes from March 25th. Dr. Boyd or our new clerk. In fact, I don't know. Is this your first time here? Would you, Dr. Boyd, would you introduce us and also the public to?
Absolutely. Yes. It gives me great excitement to have Erin Scalf sitting here to my left. She will be our new clerk of the board. She is taking Cheryl Bushrod's position, which are very hard shoes to fill, but I can tell you in just a few days, she's doing a wonderful job of filling them. She's off running and getting a lot done in a very short amount of time. So as you know, we're playing a little bit of catch up with Cheryl's absence. So this evening, we do have two sets of minutes, March 25th, and August 8th for your review. And I can tell you already that, Erin and I are working through as quickly as we can the remaining minutes that we'll have for the consent agenda moving forward. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. As Dr. Boyd mentioned, we have two sets of minutes, March 25th and April the 8th. Any discussion or comments about those? I know that they were submitted just today, and so it might have been difficult for some of the school board members to read them, but as you glance through them, are you ready to approve those minutes?
They were just today because I didn't see it when I was looking. Do you remember? prep last night. So
Yeah, they came in, and I know our clerk is a little new to this position, and she's got a lot going on. I appreciate it because it's a lot of work. Yeah, Dr. Boyd, I think it would be wise, since they did just come in this afternoon, that let's wait. I know it's difficult because we have so many to catch up on, and this is a new position. So let's go ahead and move that to the next meeting. That means there'll be about 6 or 7 of them.
Not a problem at all.
Board members, I know it's a lot of reading, but if we can make sure that we read through those minutes, and Dr. Boyd getting those to us as quickly as possible would be good.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, do I have a motion to go to closed session?
Pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3712A of the Code of Virginia, I move that the board convene in a closed meeting to review hires, stipends, substitutes, resignations, and for discussion specifically the superintendent's evaluation as permitted under 2.2-3711A, number 1 of the Code of Virginia.
Do I have a second? All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in closed session. For those that may, if you're new and you haven't been to a meeting recently, we moved the closed meeting up a little bit to allow some of the staff members to, when they make presentation, if they wanted to leave after that, they can. So we will continue with the rest of the meeting after the closed session. Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to return to open session?
I move that the King George County School Board return to open session and certify that pursuant to State Code Section 2.2-3712D, only public business matters lawfully exempt from the open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the public body.
Second and certify.
Ms. Davis, you certify? And I also certify. All those in favor to return to open session, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're now in open session. We have a motion to approve the personnel as presented.
I move that we approve the personnel actions as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
They are approved. All right, let's move on now. So next we have the action. I'm sorry. This is a little different format. You're going to have to forgive me. Okay, now we have the action items, and the first one is the employee social media policy.
Mr. Chair, I believe we moved that to discussion. And
Oh, yes, we did. Sorry, you're right. All right, let's then go on to ESSER 3, Mentor Teacher Program Acceptance Fund.
yes, Mr. Chair, this evening we have a request for an acceptance of funds for the ESSER 3 Mentor Teacher Program. Ms. Hill is here, and I'll just go through, and if you've got any questions for her, then she's certainly available. This again is additional, it's an additional $1 million, I believe, across the country for the Mentor Teacher Program funded by ARPA funds. King George County Schools is allotted $6,580 based on the same weighted fund used in the lottery funds allocated for fiscal year 2022. This funding will be used to support the Certified Mentor Program for teachers in King George County Schools. And this evening, we simply ask for approval or acceptance of these funds in the amount of $6,580.
Do I have a motion, or do you want questions? Board?
Question. So as far as spending that, is that largely spent as stipends for the mentors, or?
Hello. So these funds are directed towards anything that has to do with our mentor program. And so, yes, one part of that funding would be used towards paying an award to our certified mentors.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion?
I move that we approve funds in the amount of $6,580 for the mentor teaching program.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. So it is approved. Thank you again, Ms. Hill, for your work. Appreciate it. All right. Next on the action items is the Career Z Challenge Phase 2 prize.
Yes, we are all keeping close tabs on the Career Z Challenge. This is the project that Mrs. Rinko and Ms. Hill have been working on, and I think we get periodic updates. So we have an update that's very good news. But just a little background. If you remember, the Career Z Challenge is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Education. It's an open, innovative prize competition seeking creative solutions to expand student access to high-quality work-based learning opportunities. So if you remember phase 1 of the Career Z Challenge, the department invited schools, districts, and consortiums to share their ideas on work-based learning challenges. And now phase 2 semifinalists, which we are one, received technical assistance to support the refinement and implementation of their proposed work-based learning ecosystem plans. They also participated in a community of practice and had access to learning workshops, peer collaboration opportunities, and other resources. In August of 2024, 10 semifinalists will be selected to move on to phase 3, and we're certainly excited about the possibility of that. And you ever have the opportunity to speak with Ms. Rinko, she's very excited about that, and we're looking good along the way, and we're in good hands. This evening, what we request, again, is an acceptance of funds, because as a phase 2 recipient, King George County Schools has received $20,547.94. And this evening, Mr. Chair, we ask for the acceptance of these funds.
Questions or a motion? I have a motion?
I move that we accept funds for completing all parts of Phase 2 of the Careers the Challenge in the amount of $20,547.94.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Now moving on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for all your work. And tell Ms. Rinko, thank you very much. I know the two of you work very hard and it's a very successful program. And thank you for keeping us informed also. All right, discussion items. First one, which was as recommendation by Mr. Rolls, was to talk about the social media policy. So Dr. Boyd or Mr. Rolls, either one.
Well, I mean, so you can see that the markup. So I'll only mention things that I changed since that, or that I saw that I missed.
So you're saying further markups that you want to have?
Yeah, minor.
discussed?
Yeah, so yeah, I'll do that easy stuff. But if anybody else can discuss anything. So the third paragraph, last line, it says manner sensitive to staff members' professional responsibilities. Its members is singular possessive. It should be plural possessive. My mistake. The apostrophe should be after the S.
Okay.
Minor thing. But yeah, I guess I should explain this. Like, so what you saw here, and hopefully this was clear last time that we're going to do it, is that I was concerned that this was originally a regulation, and we were going to just put it underneath an existing policy that it didn't really seem there was any existing policy that really fit. So my preference was to take the more general parts and make that into a new policy that we'll call GAF or GAF for the employee social media use, and then take the more specific stuff and make that regulation underneath it, which Dr. Book add things more detail to as needed too in the future. So you see at the top is, I think it's two different files here. There's one for the policy and there's a separate one for the regulation.
Right.
So when I made that one correction there, I'm looking at the policy when I said that in the third paragraph. And then other thing, I'm looking at the policy for GAF, looking in the very last section for corrective action staff member violations, I see that it says in the second line there after the colon, it says violates this regulation or other board policies. I've neglected to change the regulation to policy. The regulation should now read policy.
Sorry, you're in the slide where it says corrective action under that?
Right.
Is that where you are?
Yes, and then the second line, the first paragraph, you see it says that colon, and after the colon it says violates this regulation.
Right.
It should say violates this policy.
Those are two small changes, the possessions and then policy instead of regulation. Anything else?
I mean, otherwise, it's all marked up just the way that I referred. Is there any concerns or comments on that?
Ms. Davis, anything you want to say about it? Ms. Hoover?
This was easier to read than the last one.
I did read all the way through it, Mr. Rolls, and I thought it was very well done. So if we could make those two small changes, possessions for the one where the apostrophe goes after the S, and then the policy rather than the word regulation. And I do want to hear Dr. Boyd's opinion on this. How was your feelings to the changes and recommendations that Mr. Rolls is making? Because you're the one that has to implement this.
I'm completely comfortable with it. We've talked through it, some of the points, and I've taken notice of some of the changes that have been made, and I think it's something that we can work with.
Okay, there was two minor changes then. I think we can move this to a motion.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. The only thing though is I don't see it in my folder. I don't know if I missed it or if it just wasn't here. But as far as the regulation that goes with it,
That's in that same link in the. It's just below the policy. In that
same file.
Same file.
That's there. Just keep going down. Good at that.
It's like, let me.
Because he knows what's going on. And
it's there. It's just keeps.
Okay. Okay.
was there. And I think you did a good job. So you want to make the motion?
Sure. So I move that we approve policy GAF and regulation GAF-R as amended.
Have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Policies passed unanimously.
I will just say, good.
We're done, Matt.
I want to thank Dr. Boyd for a lot of work on this. It's a good idea. It's an important thing to have this day and age. And it doesn't have to be complex. I mean, I think one of the best points you've made here is that everything, all the policies that apply anywhere else apply to social media use. It's just another public square that we have now to deal with. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Sorry. No, you did a good job, and I appreciate that, Mr. Rolls. All right. Now, moving on to other discussion items, student attendance policy. All right, there's a lot on this one. And so there may be some questions. Oh, I have a presentation. Good. Outstanding. Dr. Wright.
Sort of a presentation. We'll call it a discussion facilitation.
All right. Sounds good.
You have two things in the packet for you. One is a PDF of the 3 policies that we have relating to attendance. The other one is a brief slideshow. So we'll have the slideshow up for you. You may want to look at the policies themselves, and I will highlight the key points of each policy. We'll get started. And this is in relation to some questions about what we do, what our policies are, and then what we do with those policies as far as our procedures. So the first one is policy JEA. This is really our statute, our code, our law that requires that our students attend school. It is mandatory in the state of Virginia that all students that fall within the ages of 5 and before 18 upon September 30th attend a public school or something similar. And it gives plenty of examples of parochial school or other private school that they could attend to meet that designation. The second bullet there listed speaks to the GED exemption, that you could fulfill compulsory attendance by getting your GED or a high school diploma equivalent program, which we do participate in. And then the last one states a very important part of this. After the first 10 days of school, any student that is non-enrolled, those are reported to our truancy officers and our school social workers, and then we work with those families to make sure that they get their students enrolled. The next policy is JED. This has to do with absences and excused absences and early dismissals and all those different pieces. First of all, it defines the reasons. Well, the first thing that this one actually mentions, it talks about the important role that parents have in that first bullet and the first part of that. Not only in encouraging attendance, but if we don't have parents on our side encouraging their children, not taking vacations in the middle of the year, those types of things, it makes our job very difficult. Secondly, the notification piece falls upon the parents to make sure that we are aware whether the parent is there or not. So that is a very important piece of any attendance plan, any attendance policy, is that we have our parents and that we're working together with our parents. The second bullet there references a plan for what happens if a student does not come to school on a regular basis. They meet a certain threshold of absences of which we are not aware, we have not been notified. Then we meet together in our school-based teams. Those are called SBIT or school-based intervention teams. And we meet in those teams K through 12 for a number of reasons, including grades, sort of a precursor to requesting child study, and also attendance, because many times attendance can be a factor as why a student is not being successful. The last bullets are what happens really if the plan is not followed through on, and that's when we start to seek court services. Our truancy officer gets involved, our school social worker can get involved. So We create a plan, the plan is not met, the parents aren't following the plan, the student is not following the plan, we could then seek a petition through the court services in what's known as a child in need of service petition. So that is something that our social workers do and our truancy officer does, and they work very closely with court services in doing that. In those situations, which we have to do periodically, we then now have support of the court, and we have support of all the services related to the courts if students and the parents aren't able to get their child in school.
Question? Or do
Yes.
you want us to wait till you're done?
We can fire away.
So how often does it go from the SBIT, and obviously the truancy officer is involved with that and so on, that it eventually gets to the court? Does that happen a lot or rarely?
It does not happen a lot. I will say the SBIT process is very successful, mainly because we get the parents in the building, we have a conversation, we create a plan, they're involved, and then we're monitoring the plan. So that is helpful. It's very rare that we create a plan and then we have to bring them back in and say we're not meeting the plan. So it's, we're going to revise it, we're going to make it a little more strict, provide more supports, and then after that, if we have to file a CHINS, that does happen, but I would say very rare. Of the number of students that are missing days of school, 5 days and then 10 days, that it gets to the situation where we have a CHINS.
So-
At that point, you usually, as a parent, there's a problem somewhere in the home where the parents are not able to get, there's another cause. Does that make sense?
So basically the consequence beyond the chin, that's kind of the last thing. Is that right?
That's as far as we can go from a school's perspective, and then it's up to the courts to provide a layer of support or intervention, usually family counseling and some other supports for the family.
But the courts really can't even, beyond the chin and recommendations within that, there's really nothing else beyond that. What I'm referring to is obviously, which was talked about last time, is that in the past, if you missed more than 10% of the days was unexcused, you couldn't go on to the next year. We don't have that anymore, correct?
We do not have that. That would not be a court or decision, but that could be a school decision if you wanted it to be. That's something we can talk about towards the end of the presentation. We have a couple of suggestions.
All right, go ahead.
So we covered the CHINS, and that really covers policy JED. The other piece of our third policy, which is the regulation, is JEDR, which really talks about defining what our categories that we enter. Our attendance secretaries enter one of three categories. So the first is unverified absence. An unverified absence is when a student does not attend school for a day or a portion of the day, but we don't know why. We've had no communication from the parents, so it stays unverified until we receive that verification. An excused absence is when a student misses a day of school, but we know why, and it is an acceptable reason. And it actually defines the reasons in policy. Those acceptable reasons, or at least examples of acceptable reasons, are mentioned in policy. The unexcused absence is an absence that does not meet the acceptable use. An example that's given is car trouble, or I overslept, for example. Those are given as examples in our policy. Also, an unexcused absence is one that after 3 days, an unverified absence, if we have not received anything from our parents, it goes from unverified to unexcused. So at the end of the year, we'll either have excused or unexcused absences. But the most important part of this, and there's tardies and early dismissals, which our school administrators, especially at the high school, come up with creative ways to incentivize students being on time, especially for our drivers, so that they get to school on time. But the regulation and all these policies really have nothing to do when it comes to our accreditation with the excused versus unexcused. And it's an important piece that you understand is that as far as accreditation looks at the absences, they don't look at excused or unexcused. If you're absent, it goes against your chronic absenteeism. So if you took a family trip for 2 weeks and missed 10 days of school, and then you happen to get sick for 5 days, that's 15 days. At 10%, depending on how many days we have, once you get to around 18 days of school, you're going to be chronically absent. So if you were to be sick a few times and you were to have a trip or two, even a college visit, something that you would think, well, that's a great thing. Those are all absences from school. So then you would be chronically absent as a student. Does that impact you? You're probably going to miss some instruction. You probably might struggle. You might have to make up that work. But more than likely, if you're a good student, you could still be successful. However, you would be considered chronically absent. So how do we battle that? Because there's a lot of folks that are like, well, I have a vacation plan because that's the cheapest time to go and we get really good rates. So we're going to go and we're going to take our kids out of school and they can make up their work because we have virtual learning and it shouldn't be a problem. So there is one problem. Your student will most likely probably end up being chronically absent. So that brings us to where we are now. Beginning this school year, part with the All-In Act and the funding going towards the All-In Act, we were able to have tutoring, after-school tutoring. We had funding for Saturday schools, and they also added a piece of this to allow students to make up days. And the rate of make-up days are listed there for our secondary schools. For every 3 hours, you can make up 1 day of school. For every 2 hours, you could, at the elementary levels, you can make up also make up a day of school. And we started with this. The elementary schools are already starting late in the fall. The secondary schools started picking up on this early in the spring, and we had excellent participation. This was already part of the elementary schools' normal day-to-day process to have these after-school programs, but now we could count them to recover days absent. So we had the percentage or the students that participated are listed there in middle school and our 3 elementary schools, and we were able to make up some time. You don't see the high school there, but the high school did have quite a few students participating in Saturday school. It wasn't so much to recover from being chronically absent, it was more for graduation. And those students were there working feverishly several Saturdays towards the end of the year, trying to get work completed so that they could meet the demands needed for graduation. As far as where we are, as far as the chronic absenteeism, 4 of our schools achieved a level 1, which is green status, which is as good as you can be. So we're very proud of all those schools, which means they're less than 15% of the students were chronically absent. Our high school was over that. We were sitting at around 23% of our students were chronically absent, which is definitely greater than 15%. And so they are a level 2, and we're working to, if they can reduce that by 10% for next year, or drop all the way down to 15%, then they would be they could reduce that to level 1. So last slide is where do we go from here? We want to continue the recovery efforts. I think that was, especially in our secondary schools, started to catch on to that, to where we can turn in that data to Ms. Webb in the school board office, and she can send that to VDOE and reduce our numbers of students who are chronically absent. I think monitoring our data very closely to see who's at that threshold so that we know who needs to come. Continue to work with our positive supports, which is also part of our policy, our PBIS program and our Character Strong program all encourage good attendance. We want to continue to focus on these 3 things, which are 3 of my favorite: connections to our students through relationships and relevance to our students. If kids don't see that school is relevant, they're less likely to come. And if they're connected to someone in the school, they're more likely to come. So when they can see things like what Ms. Hill was doing and Ms. Rinko with the connections to Career Z, and they start to buy in and they see the relevance, or some clubs, or just one teacher, bus driver, paraprofessional that they connect with, then they will come back because they have that connection. Lastly, considerations. I think last time you were talking about what it could look like. I know there are some school systems that have created a attendance policy that does have a minimum number. So that is something we could look at. I do think it would take some meetings. I think it would take focus groups. I think it would definitely need to involve our stakeholders, our parents, our community, our staff, and our students to look at what were the possibilities. And then if someone, the downfall to that is what happens when they hit that threshold. You have a student who is a senior, they're trying to graduate, they missed over the number of days. So what do we do? And those would be the hard questions that we would need to come up with some ways and some paths that students could recover, similar to the days here, and some ways that they could appeal also to the board for any sort of waivers depending on such circumstances and those types of things. So something that's been done in the past, I think we've all probably seen similar policies. I worked in a county that had policies, probably King George had a policy similar to that, and they've sort of gone by the wayside in the desire to do everything we can to get students to graduate and graduate on time, no matter what. And I think probably we need to rein that back in just a little bit, and also make sure we all need to be here, because without everyone in the building working together, it's not really the same school. So I'll stop, and if you have any questions, I'll do my best.
Yeah, I have several, but I'll ask my other board members to ask first. Go ahead. You have them. I have a lot.
Just one. So I think we're talking about chronic absenteeism, or having that label being gone more than 10%. Doesn't matter whether it's 6 days or not. So, but surely in some respect, there's a distinction maybe between whether a student is sick or just playing hooky, right? So in what case does that matter?
No, there's no distinction.
I think it does matter. The excused versus the unexcused is still something we keep track of. So when we're dealing with unexcused absences and the parents not communicating with the school, that is where we end up with a plan, court, potentially a CHINS petition, but definitely at least conversation with the parents, like, hey, your child's missing. We don't know where he's been or she's been. So that's one piece of it. The chronic absenteeism, it could be all excused, and the parents are very much aware, and they've written notes, and some were, but it's still a chronically absent student. So those are situations where we would want the student to come and maybe make up some days by coming after school or on Saturday school. So it is a bit of a sticky wicket, if you would, for students who may have straight A's but are also chronically absent. And you ask, how can that be? It's because we've made learning so accessible to our students. And if they are able to do that, that's interesting.
Several questions, and other board members may have some more too, but one, I'll just take them one at a time. What percentage of that 15% is, especially in high school, obviously, there's what the issue is, because the state doesn't care. Excused, unexcused, 15%, we're in that other category. What percentage of that 15 or 23% you said is unexcused absences? Do you understand the question?
I would have to guess.
Because to me,
Yeah.
that's a key point to this, because I think that it would be hard to have some, let me back up a little bit. I agree that there needs to be some positive reinforcements, some positive things like Ms. Renko and Ms. Hill and so on for doing wonderful things to get them to want to be here. But I think as an educator and teacher, there's this combination of positive incentive things you do, but then there's also got to be the consequences. There's always a balance. And it sounds like that we're doing everything we can. We can still do more with the positive things and the reinforcements and so on, but maybe the consequence thing. And one of the first things to do is the excused absences, that sometimes there's no choices, but the unexcused absences there may be choices. So I'd personally like to know, what is the percentage of that 23% that's unexcused absences? And then second question, if we can do this, is of that 23% in high school, what grade level do you see or do we see that frequently is the highest number of absences unexcused? And to break that down a little bit. And if it is a lot at the senior level, one of the things that this is a negative consequence, but it is maybe a committee, and I agree with you. I think we should get some sort of group or committee to discuss this. One of the things we did to try to help that was if they did not reach a certain level, especially in those unexcused absences as a senior, we didn't let them walk. They still got their diplomas, but we didn't let them walk at graduation. Whoa. Now, I'm not suggesting we necessarily do that, but what I am saying is I do think we can continue with the positive, but then also have some pretty serious consequences for unexcused absences, especially would mean something at the senior level. Again, I'm not saying we need to do that, but we do need to look at that balance and see what we can do to improve that. So I guess three things I'm saying. One is, can we get a breakdown of that 23% in high school? Two is what percentage per grade level, especially the unexcused absence part. And three, maybe, because what I mentioned was just an idea. Please don't think we're going to do this, okay? It's just an idea. Is getting a committee together, like you said, especially in regards to finding ways of this positive and negative reinforcement, that we might be able to implement specifically with those unexcused absences to get below that 15%. Other board members?
You got it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. All right. Next is policy manual updates. Can I make a suggestion on this, Dr. Boyd, and also for our new clerk?
Yes.
In the past, just like you've done with the action items, each one of those, we can click on it and it went specifically to that one. And now when we go with these updates, it's one gigantic file, which if, let's just say 3 or 4 of them are good and now somebody says, which happens often, well, that's on page 25. Well, no, I'm using this. I think it's valuable, like was normally done, if you can, to each one of them, we can click on it, and that goes only those 2 pages of that policy.
Gotcha.
I have I'll just say, Mr. Chair, I do prefer this, just personal preference.
Well, no, you could still use it. I'm not saying do away with this.
Have it both ways, you're saying, is what you're asking?
Which is what it used to be. Yeah, and all the way up until today, you could do both. In fact, if you remember the last board meeting, Mr. Frank was using the one with all the pages, and he said on page 65 or something.
Okay.
Yeah, the full packet was there. But then I usually click them individually, and then therefore I'm going right to that one policy, and then there's only that policy's there. It's just easy as the board chair to jump back and forth rather than going back with all the pages. So I am saying just the way it was before.
I understand. I got it. Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's go through them.
So, and Mr. Chair, if I might add too, this is the most recent group of VSBA policy updates, and this evening is just about, I think the number was 10 if we don't count the ones that were reviewed but not revised. There is about 50 right now that VSBA has legal references on. So what I'm interested in, and we can certainly do whatever the pleasure of the board is, working through these as efficiently as we can, especially if there's not huge controversial changes. But again, it's all about the appetite of the board. So what I'm saying is that when we get, to the next meeting or the meeting down the road, I'm interested in how many of these policies you guys would like to review at one particular time so that we can work through them efficiently and catch up with VSBA's updates.
That's a good point. I can tell you right now, the first one, the non-discrimination policy, I would definitely, now, I didn't see anything crossed out or nothing, so that just meant it was reviewed, and that's it?
Most of them are just legal references.
They added the word ethnic.
Oh, it did. Oh, thank you, Mr. Rolls. Yes, it did add the word ethnic. You're right.
Yeah.
I would, yes. This was talked about within the first few months that we were on the school board. And I did take a couple hours today looking over non-discrimination policies to about probably 100 different, what do we have, 132 divisions? I bet I looked at about 100 of them. And I was surprised as I was thinking they may all be similar to the Virginia Code. They're not. They're all over the place. And some of them I really liked. I don't like ours necessarily. This is one, not today, but I would like the rest of the board, if you would, to go through this, and I would recommend maybe even looking at some other policies and non-discrimination policies. I think when we first went through this last year, I made an assumption that this is Virginia code and it cannot change. And then I see all these divisions and about maybe 60–70% of them, it is the same as ours. But there's 20 or 30% that they now, are they gambling with the law? I don't know. But I would like us to review this as a board.
I don't like it either. But my opinion, I made the same assumption since the VSBA policy. I know the Youngkin administration spent something like a year or something trying to go and rewrite the transgender policy, for instance, the way they wanted it.
Yep.
And so I think it's gonna be a lot better, but I don't want to spend that kind of time. So if you have examples to look at, then I
Well, and I mentioned at the beginning, I had a whole, and I left it on my desk. I had a file of all those that I did go over, and I think there's some really good ones. I will bring it next time, and I'll actually maybe even make copies. Now, I'll mention something else about this non-discrimination, which is something that maybe it's a further discussion we can have with staff, Dr. Boyd. Is several divisions, it was a non-discrimination policy related only to Title IX or athletics. And it's like the division, they didn't have the same non-discrimination policy across the division. I don't quite understand that. This is maybe just my ignorance. Is that possible to do that? So you don't need to necessarily answer now, but those are the kinds of things I'd like to look at. The answer to your question, Mr. Rawls, I will bring what the research that I did this time, I'll bring it next time. And you'll see examples of many. I'll probably bring about only 20 of them with me, okay? Which is about what I had. And make copies and let you guys look at them or send them.
Also, we should just include that in the packet, should we not?
Okay, yeah. I'll send them to Dr. Boyd since I've done most of this.
We'll add them for the next the packet.
We'll do that. All right. The rest of these agenda items, that was one of the big ones for me, wanting to basically look at that again, especially in reference to what some of the other divisions are doing. Now, did you want to go through these one by one, or do you want to do what Dr. Boyd is recommending, is this look at these and then maybe next time individual we can say, yes, I'd like us to look at this one, or do you want to go through them now?
And just to be clear, no, I'm indifferent on how we want to go through these policies this evening. I guess my question more specifically is, we've got about, I would say, 40 more VSBA updates. Some of them are as simple as legal reference updates. Some of them go into greater detail with changes of titles and things of that nature. My question to the board is, what is our, how efficient do we feel we can be in effectively reviewing these? And how many would the board members like me to put on the next few meetings or the next meeting so that we can work through these VSBA updates as efficiently as possible? So this evening you have 11. Is that a lot to work through,
Well, personally,
or do you like more?
I read through all these and I didn't have a problem with any of them except that first one. But I'm not sure the other board members.
As far as pain threshold, I think this is about right.
Right.
I think, 11 is, you don't want to do many more.
Okay.
We do 10 or 11 per board meeting, that would be okay.
Okay, and so just to put that in reality, that
next 4 board.
If we pass them per board meeting, then the current stash that we have is probably going to take us up through maybe the beginning of October if we pass them like this evening.
Right, I understand.
If we review them and then pass them and it takes 2 board meetings, then we're, without doing the math, we're probably looking at December.
Right. Any comments? Let's go through these.
Effectively.
Pardon?
Effectively and according to time.
Yeah, well, for tonight, I think we can go through. Well, here's the thing: we don't have to pass them individually. I think we can just discuss them, and then next time we can pass them all, or we could
discuss them effectively.
With some of these, we could move to an action item if it's simple, some grammatical things. All right, so
if there's one we got to discuss, we can move that to discussion. If there's one we can just
yeah, that's good. Okay, so we've done the non-discrimination. Next one is policy AF.
We need to pass it now. Or you're going to bring them in. That's right.
The non-discrimination, it's in discussion for next time, and I'm going to bring examples of other divisions and what they have for their non-discrimination policies.
Okay, sorry.
And I will have those in the packet.
Thank you.
All right, the next one is the AF file, the comprehensive plan. If you look through that, it's really at the bottom. Some very simple things is they've made some small changes with and the word include will also includes rather than will also include. And then some other minor changes, I think, the way they've just crossed out some of those things and just added that one in accordance with Virginia law identified policy AG literacy plan.
The big thing here is that now that we have a division literacy plan,
Correct.
that it includes reference of the literacy plan.
Correct. I think that's one, unless the board has a problem with it, we can approve this one right now.
So, Mr. Chair, I'll just mention that part of the process here is not only just to approve it, but there's policy or maybe by law that we have to read all those policies every 5 years. So just so we're familiar with it too. So I do just want to point something out from this.
Sure.
So it's first paragraph, maybe halfway down, there's a sentence that says the school board reviews the plan biannually and adopts any necessary revisions. And I don't know that we actually review our comprehensive plan biannually to try to make revisions. We certainly look at it every year to evaluate our progress against it, which we certainly should be doing constantly. I think the intent here is that when it talks biannually, that there's something happening different every other year. That's probably something for us to reflect on, but if we want to do that. And if we are, I think we probably should identify, is it even years or odd years that we're doing this so that we can consciously make it different.
Do we review it biannually? Did you say we do review it?
It says review biannually and adopt any necessary revisions.
And we usually do that annually.
I'm going to say we do it every year.
Well, I mean, it's a matter of how you want to look at it. I mean, so we're looking at how we're performing against the comprehensive plan, but as far as officially like reviewing the plan and proposing changes, if we're
well, that's a good point. I think, well, we do it every year, especially in relationship to our strategic plan. There's a relationship between the two. And Dr. Boyd, at least, does go over it, at least mention it. If we could leave it like it is and still do it every year. It leaves us leeway.
I agree.
Or
yes, be aware of what we're saying, because I don't think the way it's presented as the strategic plan that we have, we officially do it every 5 years with the major effort.
Right.
So we just want to leave it at that, and we're saying we're only
let's review it every year though. And
track our progress, but as far as proposing revisions, I don't think it's been revised since I've been on the board.
Well, we adjust objectives and change objectives annually.
But I think his question is not on the strategic plan, but on the.
Well, that's hand in hand.
Right, that's what exactly. I think there was, especially from Dr. Benson to Dr. Boyd, I think we made some changes, even though it's a 5-year plan. Where are we now?
I believe it expires in 2027, I think is what it was. 2022 to 2027 is where.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, we do tweaks every year.
We review it and update objectives and review progress annually. We've talked a little bit about this. We've done it a couple different ways. We've done the big, huge presentation in January.
Yes, I remember.
We talked recently about maybe breaking up each of the 4 goals and breaking those down by objectives. Last year, we had the champions of each goal present on their goal and the progress they've made towards their goal through a PowerPoint presentation. I think where I left our conversation last was that through this next year, we were going to split those up throughout the year and visit them instead of at our organizational meeting.
Okay, so one of the first things that happened when I first got on school board was approving this 5-year strategic plan that I had not looked at all yet. So that was a little bit. But they always say, yeah, we can always just change it. So this says the school board reviews and adopts their necessary revisions. So never been up for a school board vote to make any revisions, has it?
Well, yeah, I think, okay, go ahead, Dr. Boyd.
I want to, well, when this document, I believe, was officially accepted in 2022, I guess that would have been under Dr. Benson. I think that would be the time when the school board reviewed it and accepted it on the front end.
Right. So not since then, that we're saying.
I think we don't necessarily vote on approval every year, just every 5 years.
Yeah, well, exactly. You vote on that final product, and then we update you on the objectives and the goals and all of that we.
You see, you change objectives. So have you
again?
You see, you've changed objectives.
We have. Yeah, it's a very organic document. It's one that we constantly review, constantly update. We've met some of our objectives. We've revised some of our objectives. We reach a little further with some objectives.
I can't remember when you make the, and I know we've done that, and I remember you've done a good job with that. But we don't vote on that. In other words, we could change that in our policy. I mean, we actually could. You present all those changes. We have the discussion. You've done that.
I don't believe we voted on it in the past.
We didn't. I know we didn't.
Other than the creation of the document on the front end was my assumption, but again, that was done before I was here.
So
I'm trying to remember
go ahead.
The structure. Like I think we have like objectives and there's like sub levels to it. What do we call those?
There's 4.
You have goals, and the sub levels are the objectives. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have those 4 strategic goals that we have. I guess I feel like we're doing this, Mr. Rolls. The only thing I think we could possibly add, I'm trying to think how it would be done, is that after we discuss these, and especially those kind of like we do now, cross out what we've changed and accomplished, which you talk about, and then what it is that's something new, and actually have a vote to approve that every year rather than just discuss it. I'm just trying to see what.
Well, I mean, I agree with the idea. I mean, trying to do it biannually, that requires a lot more thought versus just, okay, we just look at it every year and we'll make changes on the spot as necessary. That's maybe just simpler.
Yeah. So you want to change the wording here instead of biannually, that we do it annually, just leave it like it is? Leaving it like it is gives us room. If, we're doing it more rather than less.
Like 15, 20 minutes on this.
Right.
We're not going to, this is on number 2 or 3, whatever we're on. Can we please?
All right, just an observation, so you don't.
I do think it might be valuable, though, is when we do that next time, is to make sure there's a consensus on the board, maybe even take an approval type thing. It doesn't have to be a change in policy, but some sort of consensus or approval to make sure that we're all engaged in the activity. All right, anything else?
No. So
I
I move that we accept policy
AF
as amended. Or as presented, I should say.
A second.
Seconded by Ms. Hoover. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. It is approved. All right, next one is the AG, the literacy plan. This is pretty much all new, isn't it, Dr. Boyd?
This is all new, and this is, if you remember, Dr. Mannanen presented on this.
Yes. So do we want to, since this is brand new, do we want to take time and read through it since it's the first time we're seeing it?
That would be.
I'm ready to make a motion.
You are? Oh, okay. Would you say, Ms. Davis? Sorry.
I just feel like if it's pretty new, we should probably take time on it.
You were the one pushing for time a minute ago.
No, I'm saying to put it on
It is brand.
discussion for the next discussion.
Okay.
But we can approve it. I mean, if y'all are confident on it, then I trust.
I've read through it, and based on this,
I mean, for Matt to approve it right off the bat, then I would say let's go.
well, because we had a presentation on it, Ms. Davis,
Yeah.
very well thought out, and this pretty much matches that presentation, I feel very confident that we could vote on it.
Okay.
Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve policy AG as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's approved. All right, next one is BBD, board member removal. This is just making a reference.
Just a legal reference.
I move that we approve policy BBD as presented.
I second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Approved. All right. And BDD, the electronic participation in school board meetings from remote locations. I read through this, and this is, I think, very good. And I did mention at the beginning of this meeting, Mr. Frank had asked or told us that he would not be present at this one, and he was not going to be attending electronically either. This identifies that very clearly. And board members, if you haven't read through this, I would recommend that we do read through this. But in fact, these next several policies actually. So any further discussion on this BDD? I think it's pretty clear.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So page 2, there's a gap left in there. See at the the bottom of page 2 with footnote 2 on it. I think we need to decide what we want there.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did see that.
And I would be fine with, you read the footnote, just filling that in with the maximum allowed remote participation, which is 2 meetings per calendar year, 25%.
Yeah. Does everybody agree with that? In other words, you're only allowed to miss 2 meetings a year or 25%. With us, it would be the 25%.
I didn't get that that was missing. It was you can,
Remotely participate.
right, you can,
I'm sorry, I misspoke. Yes, you're right. The remote participations is 2 meetings a year or 25%. With us, it would be
Personal matters.
for personal matters. With us, it would be 25%, which would be, how many meetings do we have a year, Dr. Boyd, approximately?
2 per month, roughly. So that would be, yeah, but there's a month or 2 where we do not have a meeting. So I think it's closer to 20, 21, somewhere in that ballpark. But so then that would be 2. Or, excuse me, it was 25%. I'm sorry. So that'd be
25%.
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm thinking 10%.
You're going the wrong way.
Yep. So it'd be 4 or 5 meetings. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just say let's just fill that in and bring it
25%.
next time to vote on it with a clean copy for action.
You're saying fill it in at 25%?
Well, just the verbiage, it says not to exceed 2 meetings per calendar year or 25%. You just put that in there and then it's
Okay.
That's the
You
max.
just put where it says the footnote to 2, just put the exact paragraph that's right there. You see,
Okay.
Dr. Boyd?
So put in 25%.
Well, you can put in each school. No, put in what it says for number 2, which is right at the end, footnote for the reference. Each school board shall fix a number. Oh, no, that's just for us to do that. Sorry, just put in 25%. Yeah.
25% on the underline. Okay. So are we good to approve as amended?
I think we're fine, Mr. Rolls, but did you want to, just because you want to see a clean copy of it, is that what you're saying?
I won't insist.
You can.
You guys
You want to do a
25%.
discussion? Put it on the next.
Well, we're trying to, because 10 or 11 each time. If that's the only consideration, I think we could do that and trust that Dr. Boyd would put that 25% in there.
Well, again, and you can review it once we put it in the policy manual too, and if we need to bring it back at that point, then we can. But at this point, I'm just going to put the 25% in there.
All right, do I have a motion then with as amended?
I move that we pass policy BDD as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Policy's passed. All right, moving on. We're in BDDH/KD, public participation at school board meetings. Again, pretty straightforward, except that they did add this, including students enrolled in the division. So this was a little bit about the students and student participation. Basically, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more.
I think we should reject most of it.
Okay, why?
Well, because this is one other suggestion I have for the policy is we've actually already amended this. This is one of the few King George policies that's different than a VSBA policy. We've made it our own. We've customized it. We already listed in there who's allowed to speak and listed students. And we did it much more concisely and less wordy than they did it. They just add a whole bunch of words that don't add anything to it. So I think we should just get rid of that. But along those lines, unless you were on the board, already, you wouldn't know that we had already customized this policy. So I would like to look at maybe doing something like if we have King George specific policies versus VSBA, since like 95% of our policies are just VSBA, maybe we would do the policy lettering -KG just to indicate that it's been customized, or something like that.
We don't have to do that though, really, because we have the authority to make changes in our policy without saying that.
And I think we have a reference. Maybe it's on our on policy on board docs that says that it's a locally revised policy.
Well, actually, this policy it's mismarked because it has the VSBA copyright still on it, which it shouldn't, since it is a customized.
Right.
Policy.
So this is just the version from VSBA. But if you look in board docs, I understand your point. It's a valid one.
Yeah.
But it's not from VSBA because it's already customized with Dahlgren, James Madison, James Monroe, or Shiloh districts. So it's
correct.
So this is
shouldn't
our
have
policy.
it shouldn't have the copyright from VSBA.
Except that you just added what VSBA wanted us to add.
Correct. And so I understand what Mr. Rolls is saying, that ours already references much of this information. So
so you don't like the idea of making it clear that it's a King George policy?
I don't think we need to, but
well, and it does if you look at board docs. Pull up the policy BDDH in board docs.
You don't want to do that?
I mean,
So when I first got on the school board, it actually was a point of confusion for me, but what was actually uniquely ours, and so Mrs. Bushra was able to provide that for me. It was just something that she was tracking separately. I think there was only maybe 6 policies in our entire manual at the time that were
That's true.
changed from VSBA in any way at all, like change of one word.
Okay, I'm at this policy right now,
Right.
BBDH. And what is it, the point you want to make?
So, okay, so what Ms. Bushrod used to do is, I think, and what it references here is you'll see the prior revised dates. And what Ms. Bushrod used to do is use those prior revised dates to see where it was a locally revised policy.
So this one is 1/17/2024?
Which I believe was probably actually it was probably before that, because we've had the Shiloh district and all of those other references in there. But again, it's an extra step. I thought there was a line in there that said locally revised policy date, but there's not. But
yeah, why don't we start doing that?
We can reference it. Well, I know why there was an issue with board docs being able to add an extra field.
All right.
So maybe we can come up with a way to identify those dates there, maybe bold or something. I don't know. We'll see if we can figure something out.
You can add the dates here, but you can't add
whether or not it's locally revised on that
words
date.
in there.
Yeah.
I don't understand, and this is an honest question. What's the importance of this?
So most of our policies, as Mr. Rolls pointed out, are Virginia School Board Association policies.
So it's just so people know that we're the ones who created it?
Yes, basically.
And that's important?
And also, like we're doing right now, when we get a VSBA update, we would be updating our revised policy to reference VSBA's proposed policy change. So it has the potential of changing some of the things that we had in the policy as a local revision before. So we'll need to probably keep close tabs on what our local revisions are, this being one of them.
Another example of that is when I talked about the non-discrimination policy, and I said, I looked at about 100 of them all over the state, not all of them, but close. And there's about 60-70% that were SBA, the exact policy like we have. But there's about 20 or 30% that are different. And so that would have to be local. Now, they may still be within legal bounds under the Virginia Code, but it still then will be not a VSBA policy. It'll be a King George policy.
And so when it comes up for like a 5-year annual renewal, we want to make sure that we know it was a locally revised policy so that we're not just using the VSBA policy update.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. So we'll figure out, we'll see if we can put our heads together and figure out a way in board docs to identify a locally verified policy. But I do agree with Mr. Roll's statement as far as we have a pretty good way of identifying who can speak, and it does even reference student, which was the impetus of this VSBA update. So I think I would, and it's not my decision, but I would be fine if we kept what we had.
I'll make a couple other comments though. So I would reject the addition where they said the including students enrolled in the division. Like if they do want to stick in school and for school board, that's fine. So I guess we could keep that one.
Sorry, you say it again.
Okay. All right. So
you on the
big picture before I get into the details, I just want to reject things that are just simply adding the fact that students can speak at school board meetings because they already can.
Right.
We have that. The one thing that they did include that we might want to think about though is under the new section called student participation. Second paragraph, it says the school board may require a student to provide identification in the form of a current student identification card or other school document, such as a report card or a personal school email address.
Right.
For allowing, so that whole paragraph. So those things actually are called out in Virginia law. So I mean, if we want to do that, I think we should keep that paragraph to specify what things are acceptable. But then it also raises the question of we don't have anybody else identify themselves.
I was going to say,
so should we? So either have everyone do it or no one probably.
I think you're right. We treat students really in terms of public comment, at least in presentation. We treat them as the same as the adults.
So I mean, we brought this up once before about the idea where things were getting very kind of intense with COVID, but whether we want people coming in from other counties and talking about stuff.
Correct.
So do we want to, this doesn't even say that we will require students, we say we may require them. So we want similar may wording for adults where if it looks suspicious, like people are maybe coming from out of the county, we will require identification at the, maybe at the chair's discretion kind of thing.
Well, before I state my opinion, for the board members, what do you think?
Okay. I'm good with Matt's suggestion. I mean,
Well, he's adding something else. What he's saying is that maybe we may require, before someone gives public comment and they say they're your resident, we may require identification. But specifically, this is talking about students. But if we do it for students, why wouldn't we do it for everybody? And we don't do it for everybody now. So what Matt's saying is we could put the word may require for everybody.
I think if they give their address and their voting district, I think we're a small enough community still that we're okay. That might be something that we have to visit later, but I don't.
Could add their address.
We specifically removed that in the past, but I don't really.
Oh, that's true.
Announce
There's another side to that. You're right.
So yeah, if it's just our community, then it's not a problem. We're fine. But the point is when people are coming from outside the community. And
I'm agreeing with you.
that's a
I
problem.
just don't. I think Ms. Hoover's point is we'd be able to recognize that most of the time. We're small enough that I think if there's any question, that's a good point though. And if there's any question,
what about like the grandparents who live outside, but they have
we don't have a problem with that. That's
what ID would they show?
they would just say that they're a grandparent, and maybe the chair would ask, what is your grandchild's name and which school do they go to?
No, I mean, for showing an ID, it could get sticky. Like one person get offended that you made them show an ID and another could.
No, personally, I don't think they need to show an ID. I think we should just leave it and not require it for the student either.
So you're saying just drop all the new
I
stuff?
like your idea about dropping all this, yes.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be a lot to have to check all that in, but
all right. So
I don't know. I mean, in that situation, it'd be rough. Like, what do you do? Like, what were you saying, Mrs. Hoover? As far as we're small enough, that you would just say, "Hey, you're
How
not
often
from
do
around
we?
here."
I mean, what's that?
You just like call them out and say, "I don't know, but I don't think you are."
No, I just think that between the staff that's here and the superintendent and the people on the board, that I think it'll be obvious if somebody's not. I think we're going a little too far.
And we can just deny them the ability to speak.
yeah, and if somebody starts to speak, and Dr. Boyd, you may, I don't know, your staff might be a little more attentive to kind of give a motion or say something. I don't know.
What is your opinion? I mean,
I agree with you. I think, like you said, in the future, we might be large enough to have to go a little deeper than this. I can see larger school divisions having this concern. I don't see that being an issue too much in King George County right now.
I don't either. All right, so recommendation is to remove this whole student participation part because we've already got it?
Just reject all the proposed changes.
That's right. Well, yes.
Well, unless there's a legal reference, I guess, that we maybe need.
I'm sorry, what?
There's one change to legal references, and I suppose we probably should accept that.
Oh, you mean the 22-1-79?
Right.
And what is?
That's just saying that student, well, basically it's kind of verbatim here, but it's just a lot of words to say that students can also participate, and we're allowed to require ID if we want to, but we don't have to.
I don't think this is direct verbatim from Virginia code. Honestly, I think it says something about student participation. Is that what you're saying?
I looked it up and it's pretty close.
Oh, is it?
But I mean, it's like I said, it's a lot of words to say that students can participate.
I know, and we're doing that.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with leaving it there. So leave the Virginia code, but eliminate all of the student participation because we're doing that.
So, okay. Accept the legal reference and then delete all the other changes.
Yep.
Okay, so that I'm clear, we're going to keep our current locally revised policy. And the only thing we're going to add to our locally revised policy is the legal reference of 22.1-79.
Right.
Okay.
Do we have a motion
for that?
I have one question if I could first. So like, I was talking about the policy numbering. Do we have any idea why this is BDDH/KD? What is the?
From what I could tell at one time, it was in both parts of VSBA's policy manual, in section K as well. I'm not sure.
It's not in ours though, is it?
I don't believe it's in ours.
Well, then eliminate that.
I think we can take KD out, honestly.
Yeah, take it out.
Okay, so we would, to revise, well, there's no motion, but,
I can.
okay, all right.
I move that we rename policy BDDHKD to just BDDH and reject all VSBA suggested amendments except for adding the new legal reference of 22.1-79.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's passed. Thank you. That was good discussion, Mr. Rolls. All right, a BDDL, electronic participation in committee meetings from remote locations.
I would just treat this the same as BDD, where we add in the 25% and call it good.
Yeah. So
Approve as amended.
as amended.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we, with that amendment, we fill in the 25% max for personal adders participation remotely and accept policy BDDL as amended.
I second.
Any further discussion?
No.
I would just say, I think by doing this, it makes these the same, whether you're remote or in person, 25% is the most you can miss. I think anytime we can make things a little clearer and not change it slightly, it's helpful. All right, all those in favor, go ahead.
You understand the only difference between this and the other policy is that this is for committees, whereas the other one was for school board.
Yes,
Okay.
but again, keeping things the same is valuable. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes. All right, next one. Do we have another one?
Yes, CLA.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
That's right, CLA, we're right towards the end anyway. Reporting acts of violence and substance abuse. Oh, yeah, I read through this one, yes. It was very minor.
I think that's a very small change at
Yes.
on the last page.
Research-based. Instead of prevention of, it's research-based. Is that, I think that's the only change, isn't it?
Yeah, and then there's the cross-reference at the very bottom.
The health education, physical education, yep. All right, that's very simple.
So just
Motion.
just one correction to make. So on page 2, and let's see, maybe somewhere else too. Let me check. Just page 2, we neglected to fill in King George County Schools for the school division name.
Oh,
Just make that. Is it page 2 or let me look? No, it's page 1. Sorry.
Oh, on the bottom.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
yep, where it says school division name. Very good. Thank you for catching that, Mr. Rolls. Glad you're here. I don't know what we do. We'd miss all these things.
So I move that we approve policy CLA as amended.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, DA, management of funds.
And I think this is just a legal reference.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it. That is, it's just the DA management of funds, legal reference 22-1-100 and then 1-101. That's it.
I move to approve DA as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes. DG, custody and disbursement of school funds. Again, just simply in some number changes.
Legal reference and cross-reference.
Yep. Have a motion?
I move that we approve policy DG as presented.
I second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. All right, DJ, small purchasing. Yeah, Dr. Boyd, do you have a comment about this one?
No, this is just to up those sums and to include services in the aggregate. So to include the total sum, not to exceed 200,000, and then they up the next amount there to 300,000. Inflation.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's true. All right, this is just, yeah, you're right, it's just cost of inflation. Everything's going up, which is sad, but, so do I have a motion?
Move to approve policy DJ as amended.
I second.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, approved, and that is it. All right.
One more. Just kidding.
Good, I'm glad you could laugh, this is good. All right.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, the will of the board is to bring forward about the same amount next time?
Yep.
Okay.
I think even this took us 25, 30 minutes, but it's fine. All right. Okay, discussion items, where are we? Policy, superintendent evaluation process. All right, you look at this very quickly. I made one suggestion at the bottom, but I do think this is something, since we're kind of late, what I would like to suggest, you see my suggestion is in dark on the underneath performance objectives, the 40%, where it says exemplary, proficient, developing, unacceptable. In the unacceptable portion, I had simply made a little note, and there's no, yeah, it says, if any of the three areas in the unacceptable rating improved by 5% or more from the previous year, it will be counted as proficient and place it in a developing needs improvement area. All I'm saying is last year there was quite a bit of discussion that we need to show kind of longitudinal or if improvement is being made, that's more than picking a particular SOL score at a particular time. It's much more valuable as far as evaluating Dr. Boyd is if we were unacceptable last year, but yet we've improved by say 10 or 15%, I would say that's a good trajectory. And I know in terms of reporting it, we have to report that. But in terms of Dr. Boyd's evaluation, I want to see improvement rather than simply putting something at a particular place. I think there's other things in this form. Board members, it would be my suggestion that over the next couple of weeks that you look at this and see if you want to make any other changes. This was primarily produced by Ms. Gonzalez last year, and I think she did a fairly good job, but I think this change that I suggested here and something others should also be made. Thoughts on that, board members?
So, Mr. Bush, so I understand giving credit for improvement, but it's unacceptable. I want to clarify what you're saying here. So it's unacceptable, improved by 5%, count it as proficient and place it in developing needs improvement. So I don't understand what it means to count it as proficient, but place it in developing needs.
Well, we just count it as proficient, you're right. Just simply, I would not, if there's been improvement of at least 5% over the previous year in this particular category, don't leave it in unacceptable. If there hasn't been improvement, if it's only been 1%, you leave it there, it's unacceptable. But if you've had at least a 5% improvement in that area over the previous year, count it as acceptable. That's proficient, sorry.
I mean, I would disagree. I mean, I give credit, but I mean, so it's obviously it's not good now. So I think it'd be more accurate to say that it's still developing and needs improvement.
So just simply put it in the developing category.
Right. Move it up one category.
One category. Yeah, I should. Okay, that's fine. Either one, it's when it goes to the unacceptable that it goes negative. And I think if there's been improvement. So would you agree with the 5%, or you think it should be more or less?
So as you're
Depends where it's at on the rating. This has nothing even just to do with Dr. Boyd, but if you have a 40 in math and you get a 50 in math, you're still failing.
But he's improved over the last year. So
He's not acing math. He still needs help.
Or this is just.
So I know, but it's hard for me to look at Dr. Boyd and say that, but I'm looking at what you're trying to do is move it to something that's not proficient to proficient.
Well, no, yeah, I agree with, I shouldn't have put that. I would move it to developing needs improvement.
But I also like what you're doing because I think if it's showing improvement, what you were explaining, that's important to see, not just numbers, not just the 50.
I think it was confusing. Mr. Rolls was pointing out that I mentioned that proficient and in putting it in both places, it just needs to be put in one.
So just so I'm clear, remove in that statement, count it as proficient, and I'll just scratch that part and it should read If any of the three areas in the unacceptable rating improved by 5% or more from the previous year, place it in the developing needs
Correct.
improvement area.
But what if it's improved 50%? Then you would place it where it needs to go.
Still,
Yes.
So
Yeah,
right
yeah.
here, it's saying
Yes.
to place it into needs improvement, 5% or more.
what I'm saying is if it is in the unacceptable area, so it's already.
You're just saying, take it where it needs to go. Move it up in the acceptable box. Because right here, it's saying 5% or more from the previous year, move it into the developing needs. But what if he is proficient?
Well,
Then it's proficient.
then
It's not acceptable anymore.
It's not unacceptable anymore.
It says, oh, you're saying if it's still
If it stays in-
found in unacceptable.
Still there.
Okay.
If it stays
Okay,
in the
thank you.
unacceptable.
So
Yes.
just to be clear about when we say people sometimes we
I
confuse the
understand.
percentages. So when we say 5%, we mean 5 percentage points. So for instance, if it was if science was unacceptable because it was down to 60%, then we went up to 65%. Is that a 5% increase? We're talking 5%, 5 percentage points.
Yes.
So maybe we should just make that clear. We can see rating improved by 5 percentage points or more.
Instead of saying.
Because 5% of 60 would be.
I see what you're saying.
Be 63%.
5 percentage points. Okay. You see what he's saying, Dr. Boyd?
Yes.
All right. Add the word points.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we can do, I still want everybody to look at this some more. Okay. But we can make this current change now, and then everybody will study. The rest of the board will study this a little bit more.
I did have a couple non-mathematical suggestions.
Okay.
Make
Go
it
ahead.
simple.
Go ahead if there's
So
something.
for the evaluation schedule, right now it says formative June 30th and then the
yeah, that's true.
summative by the 31st of December. But it's not really quite what we do. So either I like to adjust that to more of what we're doing or make sure at least it's reflected in the timeline down below. It's more like we do it in March or April for the formative and the summative is in October. Right. Because I think that also helps us do at least the formative before the end of the
If you remember at the last board meeting, I gave a new timeline, which is close to this, but it's not exactly this. Why don't,
I don't.
do you remember that?
What was different, roughly?
I'd have to pull it up. Why don't we do this? Everybody agreed with the timeline that I proposed last time, which is similar to what you're talking about. Let's put this will be a discussion item, but go ahead and make that one change about the unacceptable that we talked about. But now as far as the timeline, Dr. Boyd, let me put in the timeline that I brought before the board. Do you remember that, other board members? Let me put that in here. We'll cross this out and show the difference of what I suggested last time.
So is just as far as in terms of the formative and the summative, is it more like a spring and
Yes.
fall thing?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And I did say with the summative that it just needs to be done before the second board meeting at the end of the year or something like that. Okay, so we'll bring this back next time. We'll have the one change that was recommended, and then I'll be sure Dr. Boyd sees the timeline schedule that I proposed at I believe it was the last board meeting, wasn't it, Dr. Boyd? I believe
so.
And then we'll bring this back for further discussion.
One other thing, because I don't think it's mentioned anywhere else, not in the policy above this, but that when we're doing our evaluation in the spring and the fall, we're just looking back for the spring, it'd be for the current fiscal year, and then when we get the fall, we're looking at the fiscal year that just ended in June. So that there's confusion, I think, before about whether we're talking about evaluating over the past calendar year or fiscal year. And I think I just like to clarify that it's the fiscal year.
It's a good point. So how would you make it clear?
Also, if you agree with that, well, I think what I hear is just say we can put quote under formative assessment. I guess
Formative assessment shall be completed by each school board member and delivered to the superintendent during closed session. At which part of the year? I'm sorry, where you're looking at now? Under the timeline, is that what you're looking?
I'm trying to. I mean, if you agree with the general principle, I could just think about it and propose that to be put in the packet for next time. Some specific wording.
Okay. All right, so you're going to go ahead and send that to Dr. Boyd, and then I'll send him my timeline, and we'll make that one change. All right, but other board members read through this, and we'll have this as discussion next time. All right, let's go on. Regular attendant agenda for format.
It is some performance stuff, so you just want to wait and talk about anything more on this next time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and actually show something where we can see your changes for next time? Okay, this one right here, which is the last one, this was also, and I know there was an old agenda put in this, because if you notice, the closed meetings had a different section, but that's not what this is about. I wanted to talk very briefly about the invocation again. And we right now still have the invocation. I'm still inviting people from all over the county that have a religious entity within the county, and I've done that. As you can say, even today, there was 2 people, there was a little confusion, which I'd rather have 2 than none. But there has been some further discussion about the possibility of not having the invocation, but have the prayer as part of the public comments. In other words, I would invite people to come and sign into public comment, and but the function would be to say a prayer. I see some possible legal things wrong with that, but that would make us a little safer. That's not even the right word. That would make us, I think it's vitally important that we begin the board meeting with prayer. Where it's put is not as important. That's the bottom line with why I wanted to discuss it a little bit more. Any thoughts on that? We can leave it exactly like it is, like we've been doing it, or the possibility of having the prayer during public comment.
I think we should, my opinion is we should leave it like it is.
Okay. Ms. Davis? You agree, Mr. Rolls? Ms. Davis?
Why are we bringing it back up? Did something happen?
There's been some discussions and some other information that I've received. That's all. I'm not saying we absolutely have to. I'm just wanted to
I
bring it
can't
up.
make a decision what I don't know. So if you know something that I don't,
Some emails and letters that I've received, which I think you guys, I believe I've sent copies of it to you.
you did.
We can talk afterwards.
I can't.
I'll
I mean,
send a copy again. So yes, and that was in response to that. So the answer is yes. It was in response to a letter that I received.
We can continue to talk about it next time so that we can maybe
I mean, no. There's not. To me, if we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing, are we? By law, we spoke with 2 lawyers who gave us. Of course, it's safe to not pray, meaning you're not going to bother anybody. Oh, you are, either way. But something else will be brought up. But was there something that we're not doing that the lawyers suggested we should do?
They said it would be a little bit safer to have it during public comment. Yes, I believe that that's what one of the suggestions.
I was there.
I think that was mentioned.
If I think back, I think Mr. King mentioned that it would be safer to have the invocation. Public comment can be, anybody can say anything they want at all during public comment. And I think that was one of his suggestions, to provide an extra level of I don't know, that's the best I can recall of it.
I'd rather not recount a bunch of legal advice right here.
Yeah, that's true.
Talk about this.
Well, generally, I'm hearing that we should leave it the same. That's what I'm hearing from Ms. Hoover, Mr. Rolls, and that's fine with me. Ms. Davis?
I would like to discuss with you what you know that maybe has you bringing it up again.
I'll send you 2 things. I can give you some recommendations of what one of our lawyers said, if you don't remember.
I do remember, and I thought we're doing everything.
Well, I had received a recent.
I'm not bowing down. I'm not, listen. I have done a lot of compromising already.
Okay, so let's leave it.
We're not breaking the law. If we're breaking the law, then let's not break the law. But if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, then I'm done with being scared.
Okay, all right. So we'll drop it. We'll leave it like it is. Sounds good. All right, next, I think committee reports. Start with Ms. Hoover.
I have a schedule for committee meetings in the fall, but I haven't attended any yet.
Well, it is summertime, so. Mr. Rolls?
None.
Ms. Davis, any committee reports?
I went to Caroline County School Board meeting just to hear how they're handling the cell phone discussion. And King George was brought up. Not bad. Other than they said it in a way that we have leeway or something. But what it really was about was medical policy. How if a student has like a medical reason they need their phone, but they didn't really state that. But I will say that their school board, what they do better than I do is keep their emotions out of it. Like when, even though I'm joking with Matt and stuff like that, but they just kind of flowed, even though they didn't necessarily agree with each other, and it just went really fast, the meeting. So that's something I'm going to work on, just picking that up and seeing. But it was good, and but that was before the legislation came out from the governor. So it was like, what, 3 weeks ago? Yeah. And so it was good, though. It was just good to see how other school districts flow and how they do things, too. Yeah. That's it.
That it?
Yeah.
So, quick question on that, if I may.
Okay.
Just went down there to see how they did things, or I forget why, or did you say why you're down there?
Say that again?
You went just to check out their board meeting? There's no.
Yeah, I just wanted to see how they're handling like what that looks like for them, and that was it really, just to see how the policy was being handled, because we saw it on the agenda. Ed invited me to go, and I didn't really want to go because we have enough on our plate, but it was worth going.
You saw they're going to be talking about cell phone policy.
They did. They had a lot on their agenda, and I thought we were going to be there forever, but we were out by like 8 o'clock. So, and we have, each of them had their individuality. They have like 6 members on the board too. It was 7 members.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing I will say, this stood out to me, is how humble our superintendent is. And I'm not saying theirs wasn't at all, because she's great. Is her name Miss Sarah?
Yeah, Dr. Calveric.
Okay.
Calveric.
She's lovely and smart and kind and everything. But it just showed me how you handle things in the board meetings and things like that. And it made me appreciate you too.
Thank you. And they meet once a month.
Yeah, and but they do have they meet once a month, but then they have a
Work session in between. Yeah.
And I'll have a brief report on the ATI. Dr. Boyd and I attended that, and they're getting ready to start the school year, and everything is ramping up and pretty exciting. And I think because they're hiring, I'd say most of the hiring is done, not all of it. And it looks pretty good in the staff. It's a small staff because it's just 9th grade that they're starting. And I can say that it's looking, I'm looking forward to seeing it actually start. Once it's started, then I'll probably take a visit when I see the kids there and everything else. But I'm pretty happy. And also that board meeting was pretty quick too, to talk about quicker board meetings. But there was no real discussion and not a lot of decisions to be made. So that's helpful, because we had to make a lot a few months ago, but not recently. I'm sure once school starts, it will probably get a little bit longer. So anyway, things are going. Dr. Towery, the one who's in charge of all of this there, she's doing a good job. And of course, we have, 5 different, is it 5? Yeah, I think so. 5 different divisions that have representatives on that board. And it's going very smooth. And basically all 5 of us, are on current boards. And it's being done very well.
Mr. Chairman, I can see Matt's head rolling because my comments were not committee comments. I can feel it, Mr. Rolls.
Okay, fine. All right. Next, superintendent's report.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just do have a few dates that I would like to remind the board of, and see if I can do this in chronological order. I have been invited to the Board of Supervisors meeting tomorrow, August 6th. They are doing the CIP request review. So I will do that tomorrow evening and make sure that we update our Board of Supervisors on any, or inform them on any questions they may have concerning our capital improvement plan. Secondly, please don't forget that if you are able, Wednesday is our convocation. August 7th, lunch will start at 11:30, and our speakers will begin at 1 p.m. in the auditorium. All of our open houses will be on August 8th, and they run throughout the day. So really, they start as early as, I believe, 9 a.m., and they run all the way up through, I think, 7 p.m. And if you're available, that's really a very good opportunity to get out in the community and see our families and see our parents, because traditionally our open houses are well attended. So they go from usually the preschool level all the way up through the elementary, and the middle and high schools are in the evening. I've been working with Mr. Smolnick, our new county administrator, and between he and I, we have confirmed that August 23rd, from 4 to 7 p.m., that's a Friday night, And Saturday, August 24th, from 1 to 3 during the day, myself and Mr. Cliff will host tours of the old middle school and old preschool so that we can begin to educate and inform our citizenry on the condition of those buildings and really address any questions that we may have leading up to the referendum. So again, the first dates for those is the weekend of August 23rd and August 24th. And then finally, I've already mentioned it, but our August 19th school board meeting, for the record, will be moved to the middle school. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, last but not least, board comments. Start with Mrs. Hoover.
I attended one of the cell phone discussions at King George High School with Mr. Watson and Dr. Boyd, and I will say that they both did a fantastic job in their presentation and their explanation and their patience with the parents. And I was pleased to see that there were actually most parents were supportive. There was just a few that had a lot of questions, but I know that everybody's going to rise to the challenge. So thank you for that. And then the other thing is, I did go to King George Middle School and met with Dr. Nice so that I could personally see the book process. And in my opinion, it's perfect. It's exactly as, the public wants it. The parents have the choice. If it's a book that's questionable, all you got to do is just tell the librarian that you are okay with your child checking out that book, and then they're allowed to read that book. We are not banning any books or preventing children from reading books. We are definitely putting the decision in the parents' hands. So I just wanted to thank you for arranging that, and thank you, Dr. Nice, for the time that you spent showing that process to myself and Pastor Davis. And that's all.
I'll just say it's great to hear more about the Career Z Challenge. It's very exciting that we're doing so well as a division with that. I was reading that we're one of 73 to get this far, so wonderful to get $20,000. And so this month, even, this can be cut down to 10. So I hardly imagine how incredible that'd be if we make the top 10. That'd be really something. So even if we don't, it's already been incredible. I'm grateful for the job that everyone's doing who's been involved with that. Even just yesterday, I was sitting down and talking to somebody. It seems like anytime you talk to somebody who grew up in King George, you're talking about how wonderful the trades were when they went through the school back then. And there's kind of this perception that it's not what it was. So it's really great that we're making this progress to really do good things for the kids these days. And looking forward to the convocation. That's always a great thing. So be there Wednesday.
David?
Sure. Wait, I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Breathing. So I'll just respond to some of the comments. I'm not going to go deep into the book stuff right now, but I'll see that people took the time to be here. So appreciate the involvement and concern. I will say that before we discuss the 2 books tomorrow, I most definitely will be reading both of them. I've already read one, and the other one's on the way. And there's some discussion about what is our job and what's not our job. And I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's common sentiment here that we look through the policy and we just know that as a board, the expectation is that we're responsible for everything that happens in this division. It's the environment, how well the kids are doing, everything, the safety, it's all on us. So there's no part that doesn't touch us. And we obviously don't do it all ourselves. We rely on very capable and professional staff to do the day-to-day stuff, but ultimately we're responsible. So I would disagree with the idea that being concerned about what kinds of books in the library, that's just not important. I think that contributes very much to the overall environment of the school. So we will discuss those books specifically and make our decision next board meeting. And I think that'll be important information to give, because I don't know if sexually explicit is as unclear as some people might say, but there's certainly been a lot of discussion where we haven't given greater clarification as a board yet. So I think having that discussion about those 2 specific books should be very helpful as far as giving guidance to our entire staff going forward about what expectations are. So look forward to that.
David?
Yeah, I think the importance of just letting the community, because there's a lot of assumptions throughout the whole community of what's being done, who's saying what we're doing this or we're not doing that. There's a lot of that going on, and it's hard to squash it all when you only have a little bit of time here, to talk about it. But I can say that, as Kathy said, is that we recently have put these policies into play, and that Dr. Boyd has been working very hard. We all know that. We're seeing the proof in the pudding. We've met with people. So just, I almost want to say trust the process, but you did vote us in, and because you trusted us and trust that we have these things are being implemented. And our librarians have removed books according to their own discretion. It's not banning them. Our librarians have removed books because they didn't feel like they were appropriate. So that, I mean, it's just want to say that. That's it.
A couple of things. We didn't take the picture yet, did we? Okay, before you leave, we're going to get a quick picture from Miss Higgins. And secondly, if you haven't read, I've read, well, not totally, but most of it. My wife actually read the whole book, and we were talking about it on Sold. But I thought I had a copy of the TTL. Can you, do I need to order it or something, or can TTFN, sorry. Can you? Okay, because as much as whether we may or may not want to read the books, how can we very well, which was mentioned, and we will, we can't very well decide on them unless we read them as whether we want to or not. I agree with what the other board member said, and there's some misinformation going on and lack of clarity, I think. And because even though we're discussing these two books, I mean, anytime there's an appeal, I believe that it's difficult for some people to understand is we're the last entity in terms of this school division. Then when things are appealed, we're it. We don't have control about what's going to be appealed, whether we're talking about books or cell phones or whatever, or disciplinary actions. It's going to come to us, and it's not like we've already made a decision about it. And so we have to delve into it, and there's a proper procedure, like you had said. They need to trust the process as much as possible. I did also want to mention that I had spoke with Dr. Boyd, and I called the sheriff, and that's why there was someone that was here today, just because these could be a little bit difficult, and there will be someone at the next board meeting also. If you notice at the beginning, I added a little bit more as far as the how the process would go with public comments. And I think we're going to try to abide by that, we've already made some comments that have happened in public comments. It's just that as we're preparing for next board meeting and future board meetings, we need to be careful of any language that's spoken. And I'm going to be a lot more attentive to make sure that if someone says, especially a name, you saw I did it today, if someone's mentioning a name, I'm going to stop them and say, please do not or refrain from mentioning any personal names. Regardless of whether it's even positive or negative, try to refrain from mentioning anybody's name except your own. And I'm going to continue to say that, which makes sure that I have communicated to the public that there are restrictions to making those comments. What else? I think, oh yes, I'm also very happy with what we're doing with Ms. Renko, Ms. Hill, and it was wonderful again to see, just looking at even the money now that's coming in from some of that. And thank you, Dr. Boyd, and thank you, and I forgot your name again.
Aaron.
Aaron. Thank you, Aaron. I'm for sure glad that you're here. Appreciate it. And I know there's a learning curve, but you're doing a good job so far. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're adjourned.
You just wrote that.